So in this video, we're going to be talking about the Formlabs Creator Tough Resin, which is apparently a safer resin. So take that as you will. Now, full disclosure, I was sent this resin free of charge by Formlabs when they contacted me to see if I wanted to test it out. They don't get any say in what I actually say in this video, and it's not a sponsored video. So with that out of the way, let's get on with whether or not it's any good. So Formlabs reached out to me and asked if I wanted to test out their Creator Series resin, which is basically a resin that's meant to be safer. So it's marketed as being safer, and that's because it is ACMO free. Now, I'm not going to try and get into all the descriptions of the bits and what that requires because I don't understand it. I don't do chemicals and everything. But the long and short of it is, that is part of basically the makeup of the resin that normally makes it a little bit stronger, it makes it a little bit faster to print off, but it's also more hazardous. It's what tends to cause more skin irritations, eye irritations, like inhalation and breathing issues and everything else as well. So by removing that, we make the resin a little bit safer. Now, before I decided to test this out, I went onto their website first to see how they marketed it, because if they marketed it as a safe resin, I wanted nothing to do with it because no resin is safe. And that's the key thing to take away from this. But they don't. They market it as a safer resin, and they do still explain that you need to make sure that you're using all like the protection, like your gloves and mask and everything else. So hats off to them for at least being honest with their marketing. So as I mentioned, it is apparently a safer resin. They've done lots of testing. They put all their research out there. They make sure they've got all the right marketing bits as well, which is really good. There's a big bonus in this kind of, I don't know, wild west of printing. You know, there's so much things when it comes to safety. Now, before we kick off with the testing of it, they also sent over this like little plushy 3D printer. I don't think it looks like a 3D printer, but I love it and it's going to sit in my backdrop. My son tried to steal it, but he's now in a cage. You know, don't steal my plushy printers. So let's get on with the actual how this performs. Okay, so it's meant to be safer. It's meant to do all of this, but how does it actually work in real world? So I printed off a few things to test out its quality and its ease of use, but of course its durability as well. Now the good thing is there's about 8 printers at the moment, which might not sound much on the surface of it, but they're testing out multiple printers to make sure that we get the settings right for this. So that way when you get the resin, you can get it printing. So with my experience, I used the Frozen Sonic Mini 8KS to get this printed off, and the profiles that they provide worked perfectly. I have no issues at all, no issues with things falling off the support. The only thing that I did find is that their base layers or the burn-in layers were just way too extreme. Getting these prints off the build plate, oh my days, I needed like a hammer and a chisel. It took some absolute pounding, which means that you've got to be careful. Make sure you've got your goggles on when you're doing that, because otherwise you might splinter a bit into your eyes, and no one wants that to happen. So I lowered the burn-in layers and then it was basically fine. But the settings that they were providing worked really, really well. Now, the reason I'm kind of languishing on the settings so much, and I might have used that word incorrectly, is that it's really important that you do look at the settings that they provide, or at least the closest settings to your machine, because all of you speedy printers out there will have an issue with this resin. It's not a fast resin, and I really can't stress that enough. On a normal miniature that would maybe take, I don't know, like these ones that I printed, on most of my printers, you can normally print something like this off in about 3 hours. It takes, I would say, around about 8 hours to get these printed off. So it is going to take longer, and that's because of the ACMO bit, you know, the chemical compound that they use to make this resin. One of the trade-offs to get that extra bit of safety is that you lose speed. For me, that's not an issue because I don't care about speed. I'd rather get reliable prints and have them come off looking good. But I know that some of you in the audience really like your speedy prints, so just bear that in mind. It also means that if you have some settings that you are like your go-to ones and you try to use it with this resin, you're probably going to run into issues like right off the bat. So anyway, with that out of the way, it printed really nicely. The quality of this resin is really, really good. I also found that there was no warpages, so I printed off some larger bits as well. So this orc, for example, comes off in multiple different parts. It's got, you know, the body's quite heavy as well. And sometimes when you're getting to that sort of size, you start to find a little bit of warpage and some, I guess, bits that don't fit together properly unless you kind of give them a bit of a scrape and a sanding. Everything printed off accurately as well, which is really nice. So I had no warping on the support. All the pieces fit really nicely. There's no issues there. And I also printed off these bigger bits as well that can be part of a bigger project. So this big like cockpit part. Again, no warping at all. And even when it gets towards the top of the print, the support's held really nicely. So in terms of printing anything you need to be accurate, Or if you were printing a larger print, like a vehicle, for example, it's a really good resin for that. The quality on miniatures is really, really good. I didn't find any bits that seemed overexposed, and it just, yeah, it works as I'd expect from a resin like this. Taking paint, yeah, painted up perfectly fine as well. All of these are painted up so that way I could show off the quality of these. I've never had an issue with any resins yet. One day I probably will, which will be interesting. So yeah, great stuff for that. Now, if you're watching this channel, chances are you are also wanting to print tabletop miniatures and wargaming miniatures. So how does it hold up in durability? The short answer is it's absolute crap. But the long answer is, yeah, it's still pretty crap. Basically, my drop tests are from 3 different heights. I'll have those listed on screen. So one is like your coffee table height or something like this behind me. So you've got them on display. The next one up is like your just general dining room table or gaming table height as well. And then the next one up is like the top tier shelf height. So I print off 15 of these demons by 1-page rules because they're basically quite intricate parts. They're quite fiddly as well. And I drop 5 from each of those different heights, and I just add up how many of them survive. So on the bottom height, which is like your coffee table height, 3 out of 5 of them survived. On the table height, so like your wargaming table height, 1 out of 5 of them survived. And then on like the top shelf height, 1 out of 5 of them survived. So I think it's my worst result I've had from any resin yet. So again, bear that in mind. The trade-off, obviously, with using something like this resin is that it's not very durable. You know, if you do drop it, chances are your miniatures will break and it prints slower. So that is a bit of a shame. I would say stuff like these orcs are fine because they're big, chunky weapons. So it all comes down to what you're going to be printing. If you're printing stuff like this, which is a big, chunky miniature, it's not really got any pieces on here that if you drop it will snap quite easily. The thing I found on all the demons were that it was the sword that mostly broke, sometimes the horn snapped off, and occasionally an arm snapped off, but the main bulk of the miniature was fine. So something like this is probably going to survive. So again, depending on what sort of thing you're printing. If you're printing off vehicles and larger pieces, again, probably not a bad resin to be using. But if you're printing off loads of different types of miniatures with spears and swords and stuff like that, it's worthwhile having a look elsewhere. So to sum up with my final thoughts of this resin, I think I pretty much just concluded it there with the durability piece, is that it's a really interesting resin. Anecdotally, it smells odd. And I say that not in a bad way because I can't quite describe it. You shouldn't be smelling the resin anyway. Let's just get that out there. It should be ventilated out and all of that. However, when I was using it, it doesn't smell like resin. You know, resin has a bit of a, like a chemically strong, just, I don't know, naturally, when you smell it, it smells off. This doesn't. It's almost like a scented cleaning product type smell. It doesn't smell harsh. It doesn't smell awful. So the question is whether or not that trade-off is worth it for you. It all comes down to what you're printing. Like I said, if you're printing miniatures with fiddly pieces, it's an absolute no-go because chances are they will break. If you're printing miniatures with bulkier pieces, then that's fine. And if you're printing larger things like vehicles, that's great because you've got all the accuracy of it and it all fits together very, very nicely. And if safety is your #1 priority, then it's worthwhile having a look into as well. Like I said, it doesn't make it 100% safe. It doesn't mean you can touch the resin. You need to make sure it's still cured. It needs to be all cleaned properly. You can't handle it without your gloves and everything else. But it is a step closer to getting to a safer resin. Now, interestingly, when I did speak to Formlabs, they mentioned that they were working on other types of resin coming up in the future. And I'm really interested to see how close the industry, I guess, as a whole can get to making resin 3D printing safer. But if they can combine this bit that is a safer resin and make it more durable so that it can survive some of my drop tests, then we are on for an absolute winner because that would make home printing so much better. I think we're a ways away from it. But then also I don't know. But from everything I've seen of it, if it was an easy fix, it would have been fixed already. But it's not there yet. So thanks so much for Formlabs for sending this over. It's a really interesting concept and I look forward to seeing what comes next from this sort of thing. It certainly has its uses. If you can't print in the ideal setup and you want to make your setup even safer, then it's definitely worthwhile having a look into. But your use case will vary. So thank you so much for watching this. Hopefully I'll see you in the next one. And in the meantime, happy printing. Ta-ra!